Are you looking for the best 2024 NFL Week 5 DFS advice around? Then get ready for the live Week 5 IDP Plus DFS podcast. Welcome in, everybody. It is Week 5. It is the IDP Plus live best ball podcast, or DFS podcast show. I'm sorry. I'm Joel Worth. That's my buddy, Jameson Hutchinson. Jameson, how you doing? Ready for Week 5?
Doing good. We've got football playing over the pond right now with the Vikings and the Jets. I don't know if Sam Darnold has seen any ghosts yet, but it's early. But other than that, got a lot to get into. Finally getting into the bye weeks. Eagles, Lions, Chargers, and the Titans are on bye. So a little bit of a different slate. We still got 6 early games, 4 late. And, of course, if you were playing on FanDuel, they still have not gotten rid of Sunday Night Football. So a lot to get into. Looking forward to it. How are you doing?
I am all right. If you guys didn't hear any screaming from up above, that's my wife, the Viking fan. So we'll get there. Awesome. Yeah, like Jameson said, we've got 4 teams on bye, starting to get wacky this week. We got the Detroit, LA, Philly, and Tennessee. So a little running back light this week, and then Jets and Minnesota playing off schedule or off the slate. So yeah, it should be interesting. So let's get to it right away. Let's start with one of the more interesting games of the week. The Buffalo Bills traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. Houston is a 1-point home favorite, and the total is 47.5. Going to implied totals of Houston 24.25 and the Buffalo Bills 23.25. This should be a fun one, Jameson. What are you thinking?
Yeah, especially I believe Khalil Shakir is out, from what I saw. Yep. I'll have to keep up on that. So honestly, that really just pushes me to Dalton Kincaid. And if anything, that means if this kind of gets into a shootout or anything like that, it'd have to go on Josh Allen's back. And we've seen him in these spots. It's expensive, but he's going to be under-owned. A lot of people are going to play the couple quarterbacks we'll get to. But I think this is a great spot. A very underrated game on this slate that I think people might get a piece or two of, but I don't think that they are going to get the whole, entire thing with it. So CJ Stroud, he still hasn't looked like he's gotten there as far as the wide receivers go, but I'm willing to go back to it, especially with Tank Dell finally back. We get the revenge game narrative with Stephon Diggs going up against his former team in Buffalo. That's interesting. And then Nico Collins has been out for the entire time. So no Joe Mixon for the Texans. Leads to Cam Akers again, which I'm not interested in. But I've tried to mix and match. I think Tank Dell, as far as the Houston wide receivers, is the guy that I've tried to pick on most. I think a lot of people are going to lean to Stephon Diggs. That's fine. But I'm trying to get to this game. It's kind of hard the way this slate is kind of gone. But, we just saw Buffalo last week get smacked by Baltimore. If you think that, the Texans have any chance on running the ball on them, I guess you can go that way. I don't know. I wish I had the answer for this. I want to play it. And I'm going to figure out ways to do it, but I just don't have a definitive answer. I think Dalton Kincaid is my answer to this equation, but how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one in that Nico Collins is just such a stud. It's really hard to not play, but yeah, I do like the Steph Diggs revenge game narrative, and he has gotten like 22 targets the last 2 weeks. I know Tank Dell's been out, but I still don't think he's going to play a ton of snaps. He's probably going to play this week, but he's a little kind of iffy. So yeah, I am doing some lineups with Diggs and Collins, and with Stroud, just do the kind of Houston's onslaught. Like Buffalo's defense is really beat up, right? Von Miller suspended, Ed Oliver's out. They got a couple other guys out, so they are really beat up. So I think this is going to be a very high scoring game, and I want a lot of parts of it. I don't hate James Cook. I don't even mind playing James Cook with Josh Allen because if you remember back to kind of week 1 against Arizona when they had, they put up a bunch of points and Cook and Allen were both productive. So, yeah, I just want a lot of parts of this game. It is kind of, like you said, it is kind of tough to pick out which ones are the ones that are going to go off, but I just want a lot of bullets in the chamber to try and go after this one.
Yep. I think you could probably play Josh Allen by himself and then have the bring it back with all the Texans weapons. Just there's a lot of ways to get different. I don't think there's a bad way to play this. I'm not confident in Keon Coleman, and I know that they have Curtis Samuel in the slot. There's some people who have try to make Curtis Samuel a thing. I'm not one of those truthers, so I can't get there personally. But if you're going to play it, it's just going to be Josh Allen for me. James Cook ends up being very, high price. He's up there, 8,200. He's $500 more. You play Jordan Mason against the Arizona run defense that's non-existent. James Conner, I think he's probably being overlooked by myself personally, but it's just tough. And then Nico Collins, he's getting into that alpha salary price, 8,800 over Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Debo Samuel, a guy who we'll talk about here in a little bit. So, but Nico Collins has gotten there every week so far this year. I think he's really coming into his own. Like I said, I want to play this game. I'll definitely play the Stroud stuff. I'll have one Stroud lineup. I'll have one Josh Allen lineup. But like I said, I think my Josh Allen lineup will be by itself or by himself. It's very, like I said, I'm just going to reiterate. It's very hard to figure out this game, even just the flow of it. Who is going to win? Is there going to be a lead? Are they just going to go, heavyweight bout? It's just kind of all over the place. This is a game people should attack, but like I said, just kind of hard to figure that one out. Maybe the answer is just Stephon Diggs, revenge narrative. Don't have any actual information behind it, just revenge game season, and play that and win money.
Yeah, I think the bottom line on this game is there's going to be a lot of points. So I want some parts of, even if I can't get to all of them, I want some chunks of it. So let's move on to the next game. That is the Carolina Panthers visiting the Chicago Bears. 41-point total in this one. Bears a 4-point home favorite, implied total of 22.5 and 18.5 for Carolina. Some kind of under the radar parts in this one. What are you thinking?
Yeah, Chicago's offense, after last week, I'm going to just have to retire for a bit from we were both really high on Rome Odunze. It made sense. All the stats and metrics were there. He lays a dud. DeAndre Swift, who we talked about last week, I thought, we had put in the grave. He's back from the dead. Got a bunch of work last week. No Khalil Herbert, which I can't figure it out. It's just Shane Waldron. So even though I don't think anybody's going to play it, the Caleb stacks do make a lot of sense. Panthers have nobody on defense, and when I mean that sincerely. Derek Brown's gone. Just everybody's been hurt, or they don't have any talent, respectfully, on that side of the football. So it would make sense for the Bears to kind of go off here. And then on the other side, this Carolina offense has gotten very condensed. It's Chuba Hubbard, who I think is in a pretty decent spot with his workload. I wouldn't say the matchup's awesome by any stretch of the imagination, but I will be mixing and matching him just because of his price and workload. I believe over on FanDuel, he is 6,800, and then over on DraftKings, he ends up being kind of reasonably priced as well, 6,100. So I like Chuba a lot. Deontay Johnson's a guy I'm going to go to. I feel like he's going to be a staple in my life for a while. Just the Andy Dalton is locking on to him at precedented, whatever you want to call it. But he's 6,100 over on DraftKings, and he ends up being mid-priced on FanDuel as well. Let me check this real quick. But
Deontay's 61 on DK, 71 on FanDuel.
Okay, so about mid-range wide receiver when he should be a high-end wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1. I don't know if that's a little extreme, but I'm going to go there. And then the only other guy I want to talk about, the rookie Xavier Leggett, looked good last week. I think he's going to just keep kind of, pushing through, kind of adding some stuff. He's an unfinished product coming out of college. I know a lot of people didn't like his metrics coming out of South Carolina, but I think he's got the goods to kind of make it happen in the NFL, and we saw some of that last week. So this game's interesting. DJ Moore narrative season going up against the Panthers. I don't think anybody's talked about that all week. If you want to go there, it would make sense to play Chicago stacks and large field stuff, but I cannot get there personally with how bad the Bears have looked on offense. I mean, this looks like Rex Grossman stuff from back in the day. Just pretty tough. So that's about it for me on that. If you want to punt defense, Carolina I think is fine, but how do you feel about this game?
I think you nailed it on Deontay. Like 27 targets the last 2 weeks for Deontay Johnson with Andy Dalton. They've been really inefficient. He's only got 15 receptions on those 27 targets, but like we said last week, we're chasing volume right now, right? Because the offenses are starting to pick up. Like last week, 10 of the 16 games hit the over. The last 2 weeks before that, it had been the exact opposite of that. It had been 10 of the 16 games hit the under. So offense is picking up, but I'm still not super confident. I still want target volume, and Deontay Johnson's getting it. So he's the only part of this game that I'm really like definitively want to be part of. Like you said, Chuba Hubbard, I don't trust it. I don't trust the matchup. The Bears' run defense had been struggling, but then they kind of shut down Kyron Williams last week. So I don't love that. I'm just so frustrated with the Bears running game. I mean, we were just giving up DeAndre Swift for dead, and then he comes out and just blows up. Roshan at least got a touchdown last week. But yeah, I think this is a week where I think it's probably going to be Caleb and one of his receivers, but I have no idea which one, right? Is it going to be DJ Moore? Is it Odunze? Are they going to get Keenan Allen going? I don't know. It's tough. So yeah, this is kind of the opposite of the Bills and Texans game. Is I think there's going to be some points, but I have no idea where they're coming from. So I'm a little nervous about this one.
That and the DJ Moore stuff kind of looks bad. It seems like he's got some. Not that I'm in the camp to be judging, but he seems like he's got some attitude issues at the moment. Seems like he's huffing and puffing on the sidelines, which I don't blame him. Anytime he gets targeted, it gets thrown into the third row because Caleb's getting chased down. But it's just it's tough. Like I said, this would be a large field only. If you're playing Bear stuff, I would say large field. I don't think anybody's going to play him. But if there was a spot for the Bears to kind of break out, this would be it. And it's not Carolina's fault they don't have any players. It's just, part of this rebuild that they're going through. The only one that they did have was Derek Brown. He's out for the year. So
yeah, that's brutal.
It just if I was playing if I had to pick between Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard, I think Chuba Hubbard would have lower ownership and might honestly, I still don't trust the Bears run defense. I probably would lean him just because he's a little bit cheaper, but I'm fine with either, guys. I'm going to keep going back to him. I know that's probably not the ideal way to go about it, but volume at that price is just something, especially with some of these punts we'll get into in a little bit. I don't feel comfortable with those, and I'd just rather pay up a little bit and get to Chuba Hubbard, if anything. So I think that is it on that game. Like I said, Carolina defense is like the total punt play over on FanDuel. I think that's fine if you're trying to smash some high-end players in. And then Bears defense is okay too, but I just I'm going elsewhere with this week on that.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point. This is a tough punt week. There's not a ton of real punt options, except at tight end we'll get to in a minute. But there's not a lot of great punt options. So you're going to have to kind of spread your salary a little bit. So, all right, let's move on to the next game. That is Cleveland at Washington. Cleveland, a 3-point underdog on the road, 43.5-point total on this one. So 23 and a quarter for Washington implied total and 20 and a quarter for Cleveland. Some interesting options in this one. How you feeling?
I feel good about it, and I hate to be the person to come on a podcast and tell you to play Deshaun Watson because I've already done that a couple times this year. I did it last year. It has never worked. There's no reason for me to do it, but I hate to say it. If there was a time to play Deshaun Watson stacks, it would be against the Commanders' defense or lack thereof. Amari Cooper has quietly gotten there if you've watched the games and don't look at the box score. Like his box score as him as a wide receiver sucks. But every time he goes for a long touchdown, gets called back. He had one last week for like 80-something yards that got called back. There was one in week 2. I mean, his numbers should be a lot better than what they are. I think people, if you were playing fantasy, are fed up with him. But, I mean, he sets up in an awesome spot this week. Seems like David Njoku is playing. I know they came out and said that he was going to be limited. I don't think they can afford David Njoku to be limited. And I will be firing him up as well. Just, I think him and George Kittle, and I believe there might be one other person, Jake Ferguson. I think those 3 are my main guys in the tight end pool if you're not punting. And I think David Njoku could end up leading, the tight end position this week. I know he's coming off the high sprained ankle, but every time he's played for the last year and a half, he's been balling. He's there for the short stuff for Deshaun Watson. And then, like I said, there's not a better matchup for the Browns offense, even though it's not looked good going up against the Commanders. So Jerome Ford is a fun GPP option. He has quietly gotten there. He's gotten a lot of receptions, and I will be mixing and matching a little bit, but I'll be leaning into the passing side for the Browns. And then Commander stuff, I still just want to play Jaden Daniels naked. I don't want to try to pair him. I know Terry McLaurin has gotten there the last 2 weeks with touchdowns, and he's been okay. I don't feel like he's got a whole bunch of ceiling. And then that's really about it on this game. Outside, I think both defenses are viable. Like Commanders, if they get a couple sacks on Deshaun Watson, they'll be fine. You just hope that they hold up. And then, the Browns defense, it's not been as good as it's been, but, just kind of the same narrative going up against Jaden Daniels if he gets sacked a couple times.
Yeah, I think the big picture in this one is don't let Washington's last week kind of sway you from the fact that this is still a bad defense. So, I definitely want some Amari Cooper. Like his target totals this year, 9, 8, 12, and 8. I mean, he's getting targets. It's just, It's been crazy inefficient. But like you said, there's been a bunch of pass interferences that have hurt him. So, I think he's the guy I'm really interested in this game. And then you brought up Jaden Daniels. He's 8,700 on FanDuel, which is it's fine, but it's only 6,800 on DK. That's only 13.6% of your salary. So he's much more affordable on DK. So I think he's in every one of my DK lineups this week. I think he's the third highest priced quarterback this week, something like that. But I like him. Yeah, I thought Austin Eckler was going to be my punt play of the week, but now Brian Robinson is apparently good to go. So that kind of sucks. Takes away what I thought was going to be a really good punt option, but now that's not happening. If you want to mix Terry McLaurin, I'm fine with that. This Browns defense just hasn't been that good, and that's it's been kind of predictable, right? Jim Schwartz defenses always have one great year, and then everybody figures them out, and then they're back to what they were before. So, I'm not afraid of the Browns defense by any means. It's Jaden Daniels, a quarterback. I got a lot of him this week, and then Amari Cooper is the one I'm really interested in on the Browns side. Yeah, and he might be trying to show off his trade value to kind of pimp his trade value if there's a chance he can get traded out of Cleveland and maybe go to Kansas City or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Over on FanDuel, Terry McLaurin 6,600 and Amari Cooper 6,200. I'd rather play Cooper than Terry McLaurin personally. Let me check DraftKings real quick. If you want to play Jaden Daniels alone and then play Cooper and Njoku, it probably will not project well if you're like doing Sims and stuff. But Jaden Daniels obviously has a much higher ceiling than Deshaun Watson, and you know that he doesn't have to have a bunch of wide receivers to get there. So, let me check real quick. Did I miss him? Give me just a second here. Cooper, 6,200 over on DK, and then
6,200 on both.
Yep, which that's kind of wild.
So he's a little bit more affordable on FanDuel.
Yeah, so which it's FanDuel's there's a lot of mid-tier wide receivers this week that I think a lot of people are going to be mixing and matching. So this is definitely a game I want to be playing in. I think Brian Robinson is fine. I just feel like I kind of have a blind spot for him personally. So I don't really have a take on Brian Robinson. I don't know if you do or not.
Yeah, not really. I'm a little nervous about the injury that was kind of came out of nowhere, and then now he's okay. So I'm a little nervous about that. I still think, if you're looking for a lower price running back, I still think Eckler is okay. He's only 6,000 on FanDuel, 5,600 on DK. So I think he's still fine. I think he's going to get a ton of volume. And there's going to be, again, I think this is going to be a positive game script for scoring. So I think he's going to get some run in this game. So I'm okay kind of pairing him with Jaden Daniels on DK if you want, if you want to get that QB RB combo going, because I think, he could catch a touchdown pass. So I'm good with him there.
So just one real quick thing. Jerry Jeudy is 5,900. I think there's some other guys in that realm. I think Dontavian Wicks, who we'll get to here in a little bit. Tank Dell is kind of in this range. I'd rather play those guys, but in large field stuff, if you think that Jerry Jeudy can get there, I think he's viable in this matchup. But just wanted to bring that up. I didn't want to leave him out going up against Commanders' defense or lack thereof.
Yeah, and I would really like David Njoku, but the word we got this morning is probably going to be limited. So I just don't know there's another tight end option in that price range that I really, really like that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I just can't see starting him with the questions that he's got. All right, so let's move on to a game that we're going to get through our system fairly quickly. That is the Miami Dolphins going to New England. This is pretty gross. Tied for the lowest total of the week at 36. New England's a 1.5 point dog. They started as a 1 point favorite, and this game is flipped to now Miami by 1.5. So implied totals of 18.75 for Miami, 17.25 for New England. Is there anything you want in this game?
We can talk through it just very quickly. I'd say defenses are okay. I don't like either defense, honestly. But Antonio Gibson apparently is getting the start. I don't really believe that. I mean, I believe he'll get the start, but I don't believe that he's going to have.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson is kind of like Duke Johnson from back in the day. Everybody wanted him to become a thing, and it just never happened. And he's got like some underground fan base that now this is Antonio Gibson's time yet again to try to show out. He always fumbles, it seems like. So I have no interest on that side. Devon Achane, I'm not going there. I know they've all had high draft capital in fantasy drafts, but this Dolphins offense has been so bad. I don't have time for it, and I'm not going to force myself to play it. So I think a lot of people will be playing the defenses. I think they're a little too expensive for what they are, and I'm just not playing this game at all.
Yeah, I think the question is does an extra week of practice get Tyler Huntley up to speed on the offense? Because last week he clearly didn't understand the offense. He didn't know where he was going with the ball. I didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. Did not understand the play calls. So that was really bad. Does an extra week help? None of these guys, I don't think there's anybody in this game who is cash game startable in any way whatsoever. It's all tournaments only. So if you want to go contrarian and say that, maybe Tyreek Hill gets something going, but he's still really expensive. HN is still really expensive. So, yeah, it's just tough to go anywhere. When we heard the news that Ramondre Stevenson was getting benched, I'm like, okay, if he's not playing, if he's going to be inactive, then I'm really into Antonio Gibson. But they came out and said, no, he's just not starting. So, yeah, like you said, what does that mean? Does that mean anything? It's just he's not out there for the first snap, for the first series. Who cares? That doesn't really change anything. So, yeah, not much I'm really targeting in this game.
No. So I guess we can move on to a much more exciting game. Colts and the Jaguars. What do you have on this one?
Yeah, a lot of interest in this game. Jacksonville, a 3-point home favorite. The winless Jags trying to get there on the board for the first time this year. 45.5 point total. Implied totals of 24.25 for Jacksonville and 21.25 for Indianapolis.
So this game's a lot of fun. There's about 400 different ways to go about it. And I guess I will try my best to get through all of them. But the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville in a decade. No Jonathan Taylor, no Anthony Richardson, two of the, obviously playmakers for the Colts, which brings in Joe Flacco, who we have seen be the greatest quarterback of all time and the worst quarterback of all time. And that's kind of where you can play it. The Jacksonville Jaguars need to win bad. I don't think they're as bad as their record. I don't think they're a great team by any stretch, but I don't think they're like the 0-16 Lions or anything like that. So if you, I just think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I will be happy to play the Joe Flacco doubles with Downs and Pittman. Both of them had, I believe, over 9 targets last week. So the offense just looks a lot better. Trey Sermon ends up being a punt option. I'm not personally going there. I don't think he's a great running back, but I can see people trying to play him to open up into some other stuff, but I'm not going to get there personally. And then on the other side, I can never play Trevor Lawrence because he doesn't have a ceiling. We've seen it for like 2 years. He just does not ever break out, but I think it's a great spot for Brian Thomas Jr., one of my favorite plays on the day. And then if you want to get contrarian, I know it does not look good, but Travis Etienne sets up really nicely. I don't think anybody's going to play him, and he's got a ceiling to kind of pop off here in a game environment that could be really good for him. I know that Tank Bigsby has kind of chewed into some of his workload, but Colts defense is not good. It's, all this stuff. Jaguars have owned them for the last decade. I kind of expect the Jaguars to win here, honestly. And then the last thing that I would bring up, if you think Joe Flacco goes off the rails bad, if you correlate, say, like Travis Etienne with Jaguars defense, I think that is a really good way to get different if you get bad Joe Flacco today.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not going there with Trey Sermon. Yeah, I have zero interest in Trey Sermon. If people want to make him the punt play of the week, go ahead. Good for you. Have fun. Not going there. The one guy in this game, I do like Brian Thomas Jr. quite a bit. 6,300 on FanDuel, 5,900 on DK. I think he's very affordable, and I think he's got big upside. The one guy I'm really targeting this week is Josh Downs. Kind of came back in week 3, kind of shook off the rust from the ankle injury. Looked really good last week. 9 targets, 8 catches, 82 yards, and a score. Still only 6,000 on FanDuel, 5,100 on DK. I'm going to have a ton of him this week. He's kind of my favorite low price receiver this week. So I'm going to have a lot of him. And yeah, I agree with you. I can't get there with Trevor Lawrence, even though I do like this game script for the Jags. There's just, again, I don't know how the running game is going to shake out, but I could see them getting a couple rushing touchdowns that just take away Lawrence's upside. So yeah, I can't go there, even though he's got a good price. He's only 5,700 on DK, 7,000 on FanDuel. That's a nice price if you in a tournament, if you want to gamble and kind of correlate him with Brian Thomas Jr. and just do a Josh Downs bring back. I can see that. The other thing is Christian Kirk. Kenny Moore's not going to play again this week. So good. Kenny Moore, one of the better slot corners in the league, not going to play again. Christian Kirk plays a lot in the slot. So again, playing against a very undermanned Colts defense. I think we've been saying that every week this year. So Evan Ingram is probably not going to play. So yeah, you can't, if you set a lineup with him thinking he might come back this week, you better go in and change that because it sounds like he's not going to play.
Yeah. Over on FanDuel, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman, and Josh Downs are all in the same range, 6,000 or 6,100. So, I mean, I think I would leave it to just 2 wide receivers. I worry about the upside trying to like mega stack, but it leaves you like really cheap options. You can go up play like Jamar Chase or Deebo Samuel, who we'll get into in a little bit. I won't get too crazy. I prefer Brian Thomas. I think he can get behind this Colts defense, but if you think Christian Kirk ends up with, say, 10 targets, I don't blame you for going that route either. Like I said, I think this game kind of goes wild. I think Travis Etienne is a guy I'm going to sneak into a couple lineups. I'm not going to be overweight, but I don't want to miss a potential blow up spot for him here when everybody is like totally off of him. I know it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but I've done worse in life. So, but I like this game a lot. I think a lot of people do too, but I don't think anybody's going to stack it. I think they're just going to try to get a piece from like Michael Pittman at his price and move on. So I think that's it for this game. But like I said, one of my favorite games of the week.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's move on to another exciting game that should put up a lot of points. The final game of the early slate. That is the Baltimore Ravens going to Cincinnati, take on the Bengals. Baltimore, a 2.5-point favorite on the road, 48.5-point total. That's the highest total of the week. So implied totals 25.5 for Baltimore, 23 for Cincinnati. All kinds of fun stuff in this one. Jamar Chase, the only player on DK who's above 8,000, or he's at 8,000. Only player at only 8,000 player of the week. How are you attacking this one?
This is my favorite game of the week, and I think it's going to go low owned just because it's very pricey. Zay Flowers sticks out a lot. Lamar Jackson has been really good this year. He has ran more, I think, than he has in the past. And I think it just ends up being very pricey. So if the Bengals have any chance of winning, which this is, I hate to say must-win game for them in week 5, but, I mean, it gets very grim for them. I think Joe Burrow is just going to have to put this team on his back. So if you don't play the Joe Burrow double, playing with Chase, playing with T. Higgins, bring it back with Zay Flowers. I think that's the way I'm going to go about it. I do want to have a Lamar Jackson, just a skinny stack with Zay Flowers. If you want to get very creative and get Mark Andrews at like 0.01% after everybody's off the train, I don't hate you for it. I know the snap share has been terrible. I know every metric on earth. He's like number 1 in blocking, though. I mean, per PFF, I believe he's the greatest blocker in the NFL right now. Times are tough, but I just, like I said, if the Bengals are going to win, I think they're going to have to do it through the air. Joe Burrow is going to have to play the perfect game. So if you get like 303 out of him, that's kind of what you're hoping for. I prefer Eric All at his price compared to Mike Gesicki. If you want to like get real creative with it, I think he's had like 4 targets each game, which, when the tight end landscape's in hell, you're just asking for a little bit. If he catches a touchdown, it pays up. It pays off and helps you pay up for the other guys. But on the Ravens side, the other guy we didn't talk about is the big dog Derrick Henry, coming off a massive game against Buffalo. Bengals are getting, I believe BJ Hill is playing. Sheldon Rankins is out, or I might have that mixed up. But, outside of that, they don't have any players on defense. That's been the problem. Trey Hendrickson was banged up. I believe he's going to play. This defense is just kind of leaking. So if they want to ride Derrick Henry for 25 attempts and he ends up going for 110 and 2 again, that's the way to go about it. Like I said, this entire game is just very expensive. So it's just kind of hard to get there. Like I said, if you don't play Joe Burrow and bring it back with Derrick Henry, you're probably going to have to play Tyrone Tracy, who we'll get to here in a little bit, as a punt running back to fit it all. But there's just a lot of different ways to go about it. And then the only other thing, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. I think people would lean Chase Brown, but Zach Moss has still quietly been the running back one for him.
Yeah, I brought up in my article this week, if you look at the teams that are not on the slate, Detroit, Chargers, there's a ton of running backs who are not included this week that normally would be. So Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, and then Bijan Robinson, the guys from Tampa on. So it's a really soft running back slate. So there's 3 running backs this week that I absolutely want a part of. I want one of the 3 in all my lineups, and that's Kyron Williams, Jordan Mason, and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is the most expensive of the 3. So if you think the game script is going to go heavy Baltimore, then I think you have to get Derrick Henry in your lineup. He's 9,200 on FanDuel, 7,800 on DK. He's expensive, but if you think I agree with you. I think there's going to be a ton of points in this game, and if you think it's going to be, basically like it was on Sunday night, where Baltimore got out to the early lead and just kind of sat on the ball at, kind of 8 o'clock away, then I think you got to get Derrick Henry in your lineup, cash and tournament, because he's got that kind of upside. Had 3 touchdowns last week, so he's one of the 3 running backs I'm going to have in all my lineups. Chase is really. He's expensive for his target volume, right? He's getting production, but it hasn't come in on a ton of targets. I think he only got 5 targets last week against Cincinnati. It's maybe the T. Higgins breakout game. I don't want any part of the Bengals running backs, because Baltimore's so good against the run, and it's total pass funnel defense. So Higgins, Chase, and then Derrick Henry. I don't hate the Zay Flowers thing, but I think he's got to be tournament only, because he's been so inconsistent. Like last week, obviously it was a big Derrick Henry game, and he just didn't have any involvement at all. They didn't need him. So I'm a little concerned about that. But yeah, this is a game that I want to have some parts of, but like you said, it's very expensive. It's hard to get a ton of parts of.
Yeah. Like most of these guys outside Derrick Henry is probably going to come in under 5% just because of price. And like I said, if you are playing the stack, you are probably going to either play Trey Sermon or Tyrone Tracy as a running back just to fit the rest of the stuff in, just so the rest of your lineup doesn't completely tank. But the only other thing I will bring up, and this is probably large field, very out of the box stuff, probably wouldn't project well, but if you put Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the same lineup and they're the only 2 who got touches, I think it's viable. Say this game goes off, Lamar runs for 2, Derrick Henry runs for 2, or even if Derrick Henry throws a touchdown. We've seen that in the past. Just getting real out of the box here. But like I said, this will probably be my most owned game of the week, but it gets very difficult and very tricky without trying to sacrifice the rest of your lineup fitting these guys in. But it just seems like this is the one that will go off in these games. Yeah.
Lamar and Henry worked last week against a much better defense than what Cincinnati's got. So it's certainly not unprecedented for that stack to go off. All right, let's hit the late afternoon window. 4 games. So you can have a lot of Scott Hansen FaceTime on Red Zone this week. So let's start with the Raiders and the Broncos. Get this one out of the way. This is disgusting. 36-point total, tied with Miami and New England for the lowest total of the week. Vegas is a 2.5-point underdog on the road 19 and a quarter implied total for Denver, 16.75 for Vegas. No Devontae Adams. Outside of the Denver defense, is there anything you like in this game?
No. You can play Raiders defense if you need a punt. Cortland Sutton actually sets up nice against the Raiders secondary, but if he's actually going to get there, I don't see it. Brock Bowers is fine, I guess. We'll see if Michael Mayer is playing. I think he was questionable, but no Zamir White. I wonder if anybody plays Alexander Madison. If he ends up in the box twice and kind of ruins it, but I just don't have time for this. Broncos defense 4K over on FanDuel. I think that's fine. I'd rather play Broncos than the Raiders defense, but I just as far as points go, I just don't think there's going to be any, and I just don't really have much interest outside defense here.
Yeah, Denver defense is my play of the week. They've held their last two opponents to single digits. Their last three opponents have their lowest seasonal output against Denver. So, yeah, I think this is a really good defense. And we saw the same thing like with Vance Joseph last year. As they got after that terrible start, turned things around, and then they were really good. So I think this just happened earlier this week. Or this year. So yeah, I think Denver's an elite defense that people are kind of sleeping on. So that's my defense play of the week. And really the only thing I'm interested in this game. I'm terrified of Brock Bowers. I love him as a player. And I think the offense is eventually going to have to run through him, but is this team even going to be able to score this week? As I said, Denver's held their last two opponents to single digits. Is Vegas a much better offense than the Jets or Tampa? Obviously not. So how many points are the Raiders going to even put up this week?
Yep. I'd rather play Jake Ferguson, who's $100 cheaper on him if you're playing FanDuel for the night game. Dalton Kincaid, I'd rather play. I know you're scared of Njoku. I think I'd rather play Njoku. I'm not as scared, but I get your notion there. Tucker Kraft will get into. There's a lot of guys I'd rather play over Brock Bowers this week.
Yep.
And that was my worry with him before the season. It had nothing to do with his talent. It was just the offensive environment or lack thereof with them.
Yeah. So yeah, the less said about that game, the better. Let's move on to a much more interesting game. The Cardinals at the 49ers, 49-point total. So yeah, tied. Actually, this is tied for the highest with Green Bay. Actually, this is a little bit higher than Baltimore. I misspoke there. So 49-point total, 7.5-point 49ers home favorites, 28 and a quarter implied total, and 20.75 for Arizona. Lots to do in this game. How are you attacking it?
I think the Arizona side is going to go severely underowned. I know Kyler Murray has not looked as good as people expect as far as fantasy goes, but especially if they get in a game script where they're coming back from behind. Trey McBride, he was questionable with a ribs injury. I think he's going to be fine. I would love to play him this week. I think he was part of the reason him being out, the offense looked so sluggish last week. I believe it was against the Commanders, but Marvin Harrison has been fine. I wish he'd get a little bit more volume for what he is, but I mean, he's made the most of it. And then the 49ers side, I mean, Big Cock Brock Purdy's looked really good this year. Seems like he is really just kind of been in a league of his own, trying to win games instead of being the manager type that people thought of him as. Jordan Mason is going to be probably the highest owned running back on the week. I don't blame you. I mean, he wakes up, gets 20 points. Deebo Samuel is going to get a decent amount of ownership. He projects very well going up against the Cardinals. I do want to play Ayuk and George Kittle. So I'll be having the Brock Purdy stack, and I'll be playing Kittle especially. And then, if I want to play Ayuk or Deebo, it gets a little bit expensive, but I mean, this Cardinals defense is terrible. And George Kittle has had a couple blow-up games against the Cardinals in the past. I know that probably doesn't mean much, but I'm just trying to get different here. I think a lot of it's going to concentrate to Jordan Mason, which I get. But I just really like this game environment overall. I think Kyler, like I said, is going to go very under-owned here. So definitely a lot of ways to get through this. Jordan Mason will be in everybody's cash lineup. I think that's fine. I'm just trying to get a little different in tournaments.
I'm not. I want him in tournaments and in cash. He's my play of the week. Arizona's run defense has been absolutely atrocious. They've given up big production to multiple backs or players in the last 3 weeks. Like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery both went off. Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson and Jeremy McNichols went off. I think Washington just scored another rushing touchdown against Arizona. It just happened. So yeah, in week one, James Cook had a big game and Josh Allen had 2 rushing touchdowns. So I don't know how you fade Jordan Mason this week. I'm going to say that, and he's going to twist an ankle in the first series or something and screw me. But he's a little bit more affordable than Derrick Henry, 500 less on FanDuel and 400 less on DK. So I think that's my heavy play of the week.
Yeah.
Because Arizona's given up so much production to like secondary backs, I still like Deebo Samuel this week because I think he's their de facto second or backup running back. And he seems to be fully healthy. So I think they'll kind of go back to giving him some more run in the running game. Kittle, I'm a little nervous about. Popped up back in the injury report again, was questionable. Sounds like he's going to play, but if they get out to a big lead, do they, just bench him and let Kyle Juszczyk just take over the blocking role? So yeah, a little nervous about Kittle because he is the highest priced tight end on the slate. And I agree with you. I do think people are kind of unnecessarily fading the Arizona Cardinals. McBride, and I agree with you. I think not having McBride was a big part of their struggles last week. So I do want some exposure to Kyler. I want some exposure to McBride. I'm going to have some exposure to Marvin Harrison, but the volume isn't there. The efficiency isn't there. At some point, he's just going to blow up, right?
Yep.
So I don't want to be sitting on the sideline when that happens. So I don't want zero exposure, but he's not my preferred Cardinals play. I'd rather run it through. McBride, and I don't hate Connor in this matchup either, just because I think there could be a lot of dump off volume. If the San Francisco corners kind of shut down the passing game, I think Connor could get a lot of passing game volume. So I don't hate it. I think he's kind of a little bit under the radar because I don't think people think this is going to be a very good game script. So I think he's a pretty good tournament option in that I think his ownership is going to be a little bit lower than it should be.
Yeah, and just 49ers defense not as good as it's been in the past. No. I think some people think that this is still an elite unit, and I think it's okay. But we get in divisional game. These games always get kind of wonky to begin with.
Yep.
So I don't think the 49ers are going to roll over the Cardinals like other people do. Brock Purdy 7,700 and Kyler Murray is 7,500 over on FanDuel. Both very cheap compared to Jane Daniels at a 1,200 more. And just like I said, kind of going through this stuff. If you want to play Jordan Mason and Deebo Samuel in the same lineup, I don't hate it. I know it kind of goes against it when you shouldn't play the running back and the wide receiver together. But we've seen Deebo get like the handoffs that go for long touchdowns. But the only thing I do agree with you with George Kittle. If they just want to make this a Jordan Mason game and George Kittle is in there to block for 80% of the game, that totally voids George Kittle basically. But like I said, I'm just hoping for a good game environment. And I'm just trying to get different because I know everybody's going to play Jordan Mason. And I know he's probably the best matchup on the slate. I'm not totally avoiding him, but I'm just trying to – if he fails and, 60% of the field has him, I'm up on the field. So that's just where I'm trying to get different there. But this is a game, especially like we said, Arizona side, I think needs to be talked about a little more than it has been.
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about that, being overexposed to Mason. But, yeah, he's obviously my play of the week. Yep.
Sometimes you just got to play it straightforward.
Sometimes you got to do it. Exactly. Sometimes the chalk is the chalk for a reason. So, all right, moving on. The Giants at the Seahawks. The Giants making the 2,400-mile trip west to Seattle, and a very undermanned Giants team with no Malik Neighbors and probably no Devin Singletary. 7-point underdogs on the road, 42.5-point total. Seattle is a 24.75 implied total, 17.75 for the Giants. What do you got?
It's goofy. Kenneth Walker's definitely going to get some ownership here. I prefer Tyrone Tracy to Trey Sermon. He is dirt cheap over on FanDuel. He is 4,900.
Yep.
And it really opens up. Like I said, I talked about if you're playing, say, even like San Francisco stuff or the Baltimore, Cincinnati, where it's very expensive, you're probably going to have to play Tyrone Tracy. So over on DraftKings, he's 4,300. So I'll be curious to see how many people play him this week. I mean, especially with no Singletary, you hope that he gets a couple dump-offs, and that's what kind of gets him there. Wan'Dale Robinson has been a PPR cheat code. I don't think it's very fair, but it is what it is. Darius Slayton, nobody's going to play. I think he's okay. I would love to play the Geno doubles this week, but I'm not sure if they'll get pushed enough to even, get that high ceiling outcome. So would be surprised if Kenneth Walker just goes nuclear. He obviously had the huge game last week against the Lions run defense that's very stout, notoriously to everybody else except for Kenneth Walker. But it just it's frustrating without Malik Neighbors. If he was in there, I'd be much more excited to play this game. But without him, I'm just not sure the Giants have the horses to keep up. And if you want to play the Geno doubles, that's fine. I was more inclined to play that before all the injury news, but it just seems like Kenneth Walker will definitely have some ownership. And, Seahawks defense is very undermanned, but the Giants have nobody on offense. So, just kind of weighing your options there on which way to go. I don't hate pairing Kenneth Walker with the Seahawks defense, but just I was more excited to play this game at the beginning of the week than I am now.
Yeah, I think Walker with the Seahawks defense is a good call. I'm still getting some Geno in. I think he's really underpriced. So if he's my pay down quarterback, I'm still going there. 7,400 on FanDuel, 5,900 on DK. So around 12% of your salary on both. So yeah, and I like pairing him with DK Metcalf, who's 8,200 and 7,000 on DK, 8,200 on FanDuel. I still think they're going to kind of throw to get the lead and just use Kenneth Walker to salt the game away. So yeah, I don't hate that. Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's like he gets huge targets on every other week, and this is the off week for him to get big targets. So I'm not going there. A little nervous about that. But yeah, I do have some Geno DK bags from earlier in the week, and I'm a little nervous about that, but I don't want to go away from it just because I think like the Giants have a better run defense than pass defense. Now we saw, obviously, like you said, Kenneth Walker had a monster game against Detroit's run defense, which is as good as there is in the league. So not going to totally fade Kenneth Walker, but I don't want to go away from Metcalf either because I think this could be a big game for him. So, and Geno's one of my favorite pay down quarterbacks this week. So, and yeah, I do like Tyrone Tracy. He's kind of my default punt play of the week at running back. I was a big Tracy fan coming in, and he's finally going to get an opportunity to show what he can do. And same thing as James Conner. I think there could be a ton of dump off volume in this game. So Daniel Jones can't throw the ball more than 15 yards downfield anyway. So I think Tracy could end up being his favorite target if they take away Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah. So just real quick, DK Metcalf's look really good this year. I feel like the last couple of years he has toyed with being an alpha, but he's starting to finally get there, especially with his workload. I like Metcalf a lot. Had a big game last week. Probably should have had an even bigger game, but it just, like I said, it's kind of tough. I wish this game had Malik Neighbors in it. I think it'd make it a lot more fun, but I think that's about it for the stuff. I agree with you on Geno. He's a great kind of punt quarterback this week.
Funny what happens when you take an elite receiver out of a Shane Waldron offense and put him into a modern NFL offense. Just shocking.
Crazy exactly. How that works.
All right, let's go on to the game of the day. My Green Bay Packers traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur showdown. LaFleur has owned Sean McVay. Packers 3-point favorites on the road, down from 3.5 early. So get your bets in now. 49-point total, 26-point implied total for the Packers, 23 for the Rams. All kinds of fun stuff in this game. How are you attacking it?
It's kind of tough for me. I liked it before the injuries, but now all the ownership is going to be very condensed into, Jaden Reed, who I like a lot, is still severely underpriced. Dontavian Wicks, I saw the line of people waiting to play him before, Romeo Dobbs, and now that it looks like Best Buy after Black Friday. I mean, everybody's been waiting for this moment their entire life. So
yep.
And Tucker Kraft with no Luke Musgrave, that sets up nice too. If you're playing cash, I think a lot of people are going to show up to the dance with all three of these guys. And I'm going to be honest, I think that's a mistake. If you're going to play all three of these guys, I think you need to play Jordan Love with them. But if you want to have two of them in your cash lineup, I think that's fine. I think three, it's getting a little greedy. I know the matchup's great, but I'm just, if everybody's going to show up with the same lineup and say for whatever reason it fails, I'm just trying to get different that way. So obviously my favorite play would be Jaden Reed. I still think he's, like I said, underpriced. And then Josh Jacobs will have a little bit of ownership, but I think a lot of it's capped just for all these passing options that they have in Green Bay. I mean, if he ends up in the box twice, ends up negating all this, pass catcher stuff, I think he sets up nice. I have no interest in Ram stuff. I think Kyron Williams is fine. I'm not getting there personally, but it just figuring out a way to play this game. It's like I said, if Dobbs was in there or was in the mix, I think people would be a little more scared to play three of them. But now that he's gone, everybody just sees the three guys just straight away. They're just going to play them all. I like it for the Packers. I'm worried about all three of them getting there.
If Josh Jacobs is the way to go this week, and I think he is, I'm going to be a very wealthy individual because I've got a ton of him.
Good.
Let's remember the Rams defense is what got DeAndre Swift off the mat. They were terrible last week. They gave out a bunch of garbage. The Packers are not going to want to throw 54 times like they did last week. And I think this is going to be a game script where they get out ahead and Josh Jacobs is just kind of the eat the clock guy. I think he's going to get a ton of volume. He's cheaper than Kenneth Walker. He's my kind of pay down running back of the week, 7,000 on FanDuel, 6,400 on DK, only around, 12% on FanDuel, almost 13% on DK. But I think he's going to get a ton of volume this week. I love Tucker Kraft. He's my punt play of the week. 3,500 on DK. That's absurd for a guy who's going to get I was going into the week thinking I was being really smart pairing Tucker Kraft with Josh Jacobs because if Jacobs is doing well, that means Kraft's on the field a ton and he should get a ton of snaps. Musgrave's not going to play. He hasn't practiced all week. He's not one of those guys that LaFleur is going to let play without practicing. So Tucker Kraft is probably going to be like a 95 to 96% snap share guy. 3,500 on DK is absurd. There's no way I'm not playing him. He's going to be my tight end in every lineup. And if I die because of the tight end, I'll die because of the tight end. If he doesn't produce, what other tight end is going off that's going to kill me? That's going to have a ton of ownership. There's nobody. So he's in every one of my lineups. I like Reed at his price point. I like Wicks at his price point. I want some exposure to those guys, but I'm running this game through Josh Jacobs. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm right, and I think I'm right, I think this is going to be a big week.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't hate the Packers offense. I don't want to come out here and poo-poo that. But if, especially on FanDuel, people are going to show up with Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and Tucker Kraft, but they're not going to play Jordan Love, which doesn't make any sense because for all three of them to get there, Jordan Love would have to go off, I would assume. But
yeah, you have to play it like Josh Jacobs doesn't do anything. That's the only way you can play that stack.
And they're going up against the Rams that, Matthew Stafford's great, but they have no pass catchers. I mean, Colby Parkinson is probably going to be the most owned guy from that core outside of Kyron Williams, but Tutu Atwell, I'm not scared of. Jordan Whittington, I think he's fine, but I'm not excited about it. And I think the Packers kind of beat him up. And the other thing is last week, Jordan Love had to throw 500 times. So people have that in the back of their mind because they were playing from behind against Minnesota. So they just think that all this offensive warfare is going to be happening through the air. And I'm not buying that. So Josh Jacobs, like I said, he will have a little bit of ownership, but I think he'll be capped because of all the excitement, like I said, to play Dontavian Wicks at his price. I feel like this is everybody and their mom is it's in the newspapers. Dontavian Wicks is finally going to be, a main guy on the field. And just everybody's excited. I get it. But if you just take a step back for a minute with clear eyes and look at this, it doesn't make sense to play three weapons without their quarterback. But maybe I'm in the wrong. I'm banking on all three of them together not getting there. So, but like I said, I don't have any interest in Ram stuff. If you want to play Packers defense with Josh Jacobs, I think that's fine too. So I'm glad.
The Rams wrote. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I'm glad I didn't disappoint you coming out feeling like I'm poo-pooing on the extravaganza for the Packers.
No, not at all. Not at all. I really don't think that all three of those guys can get there. I just because I think this is going to be a heavy run volume game for the Packers. The one thing I do like about the Rams is Kyron Williams, just because the Packers have gotten gashed on defense by the screen game. Like last week, it was Aaron Jones. Week 1, it was Saquon Barkley. they have really struggled. Their run game is, the run defense is pretty mid, but they have really struggled to contain the screen game. So if that becomes like the Rams' entire offense, then I like Kyren Williams. He is pretty expensive, so he has to get there to pay that off. But I could see that happening. So he's the one guy in the Rams that I am playing this week.
Fair enough. I think that's fine, especially at their price points.
Yeah. So before we get to the Sunday night game, if you want to join us, if you want to play on FanDuel, if you haven't started yet, go to idpplus.com/FanDuel, and you can get $50 in bonus bets after you deposit your first $10. Can't beat that deal with a stick. So go to idpplus.com/FanDuel, get $50 in bonus bets when you deposit your first $10. All right, James, so last game of the night, the FanDuel Sunday night inclusion. For some reason, the Dallas Cowboys travel to Pittsburgh, their second straight road game on the East Coast. Pittsburgh, a 2.5-point home favorite, 43.5-point over-under. So an applied total of 23 for the Steelers and 20.5 for the Cowboys. This game's a little weird. Could be a little funky. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, especially with how bad the Cowboys defense is. They don't have any Brandon Cooks. I like Ferguson a lot. I think he's probably my favorite tight end on the week. He ends up basically being the wide receiver 2 for him. I like the Dak stacks. I know Pittsburgh on defense is pretty stout, and it's probably not the matchup. But, I mean, outside of Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Jake Ferguson, where is the production on offense coming for him? I mean, Rico Dowdle stinks, respectfully. Ezekiel Elliott stinks. Jalen Tolbert hasn't shown much of anything. So I just think it's going to go through those guys. On the other side, George Pickens was fine last week. If he would have had a touchdown, his day would have been a lot better. But Justin Fields is fine. It's a great spot for Najee Harris, but I'm retired. I'm done playing that hack. I mean, he can get 400 attempts for 20 yards. I'm not doing it. So I'm going to play a Dak stack here. If you want to bring it back with Pickens, I think that's fine. But I kind of like Cowboys to win this game, honestly. Don't think the line makes a lot of sense. Even though Cowboys defense is reeling right now, I don't see the Steelers scoring a bunch of points. It's just been very weird for them.
Yeah, props to you. You called the George Pickens games last week, and he was pretty monster, just missing the touchdown, but otherwise he had a really good game. The thing that makes me nervous about this game from the Cowboys standpoint is the Steelers defense, which is really good, just got beat up last week by the Colts of all teams. So you got to think this is a big bounce back spot for them. I think this is just going to be a really low scoring game. This could be like a 17-13 kind of ugly Sunday night game that I just don't really want a whole lot of parts of. I agree. I don't want any Najee, even though the Cowboys run defense had been terrible, but then the Giants couldn't run on them at all. So, what's up, what's down, I'm not sure. I'm just kind of fading this game entirely. I'm okay just not having anything going on in this game.
I don't blame you. Like I said, Jake Ferguson's a guy I like a lot just because I think he ends up wide receiver 2, and that's the way for the Cowboys to win. But other than that, it's really not a whole lot here. I think Najee Harris is going to get a lot of run over on FanDuel, at least for his price point. I think you have to be a sick individual to plug him in and be happy. So I'm going to leave it at that. So,
all right. On that note, I agree with you. Let's get to flag plants. Number 1 for you this week.
Flag plants were very tough for me, but I'm going to start with quarterback. I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. I think that if the Baltimore, if they have to win, I think this week to actually stay in the playoff conversation. It's a divisional game. If they are going to win, it's going to have to be through Joe Burrow playing lights out. So, I mean, the Higgins stuff, Jamar Chase, 303 for Joe Burrow, I think, is in that realm. So I'm going to play him. Probably going to be sub 5%. I don't think anybody's playing a whole lot of them. So not ideal, but I'm going to go Joe Burrow here.
I'm going to flag plant the chalk. I'm planting Jordan Mason. Arizona's run defense is just so bad. Like talked about before, they've just given up just massive numbers every week, except for that week against the Rams, where the Rams just couldn't do anything. So I just think that they're just going to run the entire game plan through Jordan Mason. He's getting a ton of touches, not getting the passing game volume, but just a ton of touches in the running game. Like I said, other than him twisting an ankle on the opening drive, I don't see how he fails. So I'm going to flag plant the chalk and go with Jordan Mason. Number 2 for you.
I don't I don't blame you on the Jordan Mason stuff. I mean, if you're going to lean into it, you need to lean into it all the way. So I think a lot of people are going to play him in cash and then kind of get scared to pay up for him in tournaments. Like some people will play him, but at his price point and at his volume, I think he ends up lapping the field this week. I don't blame you there. So the second flag plant for me, very off the wall. Like I said, I struggled this week. I'm going to go Brian Thomas Jr. He is
Love it.
Quietly gotten there as a rookie so far. Goes up against the Colts pass defense or lack thereof, that cover 3 that Gus Bradley's going to play a decent amount of. I think he attacks very well. I think he can end up with like 2 bombs. So he ends up having 6 or 7 receptions, 120, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jaguars win. I just think it kind of sets up nicely there. So I'm going to go Brian Thomas Jr. Very off the wall, but I think he's going very under the radar.
That's a great call. Yeah, I love Brian Thomas Jr. this week. My last one is the one we talked about earlier. It's Tucker Kraft. I think he's the only tight end I'm starting this week. Just an insane price point on DK at 3,500. Look at the game he had last week: 6 catches, 53 yards, scored a touchdown. With Musgrave out, he's going to have a ton. He's going to get all the snaps. He's probably going to be like a 97% snap share guy. Romeo Doubs isn't going to be there. Christian Watson's not going to be there. So, the passing game volume is open. I just, at his price point, I just literally cannot imagine starting any other tight end this week because he's going to be involved in the offense. He's going to be on the field for every single play. And they're going to score a ton of points against a terrible Rams defense. So, Tucker Kraft for me as my second flag plant.
That sounds good here. So I agree with you on both of them. A little chalky, but I mean, especially for tournaments, people get scared of that stuff. So to lean into it, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially tight end field that just sucks. I mean, I went on a rant the other day about tight ends. I'm still reeling from it. So before we get out of here, just plug what you got going. I know you got a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, the Best Ball Show happens. We record Tuesday night and drops Wednesday mornings usually. I had a big week in best ball last week. I put 2 teams in the top 16 of the Wildcat on Underdog. So always nice to kind of pad the bankroll a little bit. But also have the DFS best play or top plays of the week article that dropped on Friday. So you can check that out on the website. And if you want to get a membership to IDP Plus, you can do that. Go to idpplus.com/memberships. Get 20% off site-wide with promo code PROPS. Start your season off right with an IDP Plus subscription. Get access to all our tools, data, IDP articles, and don't miss out on the subscriber Discord, which you are a big part of.
Yes. So try to be at least. So, but I'm over on the Twitter machine. See if I can get this right. There we go. At Jameson Rules. Rider Dynasty every Thursday with Joe Harlow and JJ Wenner. Here every Sunday morning doing DFS. Hopefully win some money this week. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. Until next week, good luck. Go win some money this week.
Let's get it.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.